Welcome back everyone. In today's video I'm going to show you how to use your plunge router to do dowel joinery. In last week's video, a viewer commented in the comment section and we kind of went back and forth a little bit. They asked me if it might be worthwhile buying a special dowel joining machine. I have nothing against specialty joinery machines, whether they're domino joiners or dowel joiners. I think they're fantastic to have, especially if you're in a production environment and you're going to build furniture or some kind of product that requires you remove a bunch of steps. For a lot of the home workshops and for a lot of you part-time woodworkers, I don't know that they're really worth the expense unless you have a lot of money to spend on them. But I definitely can tell you that buying a good plunge router is an excellent investment. If you consider how a plunge router is made, it is possible to use it as a portable drill press. Now, one of the things you absolutely need when you do this is you need a spiral bit in your plunge router. In this case, I've got a 1/4 inch spiral bit. This is a self-centering jig that I use for mortising, particularly on edge joints, so edge to edge joinery. And if you're interested in building this jig, you can find a link to the video with the details on how to build it in the description below. I'm going to show you how to use this very same jig, not for cutting mortises, but rather using it for drilling dowel holes. Got lots of scrap pine left over from previous projects. I'm going to place that in the jig. So that's clamped up now. I'm going to throw this in my bench vise. Now again, if you already watched the video on how to make this jig, you know that I have a starting stop block and an end stop block. For dowel joinery, I use the same starting stop block and I've used the same positioning, and I just clamp it off there. What I have done is I have marked a position for dowels. So I actually set my end stop block. I've done a few test cuts on scrap pieces to get the spacing right because I want to do a dual dowel join. And so I've got a line drawn that marks where I want my stop block to be, and I wrote a letter D there to indicate that it's for doweling. So I know if I line up my stop block there every time, I'm going to get a consistent dowel joint. So all I have to do is plunge into the first position, plunge straight down and then lift back up. I then move the router over to the end stop block and drill the second hole. So there, now you can see I've got my holes drilled and they're perfectly spaced and they're perfectly even. So now I'm going to drill the holes on my adjoining piece using my plunge router. So that's going to be an end grain piece. I'm going to put that in the vise first, and then we're going to line it up. So I get one clamp down in the center here, nice and firm. Again, I'm going to use the same stop blocks. Doesn't really matter if I took them out or not. The lines indicate exactly where I need to drill, and so I know everything's going to line up. In there I have my second set of holes, drilled perfectly centered and the same even spacing. Now my favorite part of this, getting my assorted dowel kit. I've got some 1/4 inch dowel. This 1/4 inch dowel should match perfectly with the 1/4 inch holes I just drilled using my spiral bit. We can tap those dowels in on one side. When using the plunge router, the nice thing is that your holes are always going to end up perfectly straight because it's very much like using a portable drill press. It's never going to wander. As long as you just plunge straight down, your holes are always going to end up nice and straight. The adjoining piece, line up the holes, give it a little tap from the top. And that's pretty much it. That's perfectly lined up, perfectly solid joint. I haven't even glued it yet. And I can move it around. Using the same mortising jig that I showed you how to use in the last couple of weeks, you can also do expert dowel joining. If 2 dowels are not enough, you can definitely set it up to drill 3 or 4 holes, however many you like. It's really easy to adjust this. So taking it apart and putting it back together again is pretty easy. Just like that. Out of all the jigs that I've built, this is probably the easiest dowel joint that I've ever made. So that shows you how to do dowel joinery using your plunge router on edge joints and getting them perfectly centered and perfectly lined up. But what about off-centered configurations and different types of dowel joints on the surface? So if you're building, for example, adjustable shelves and you need perfectly spaced dowel holes all the way down a board, how do you do that? Well, let's go back to our plunge router kit. Most plunge router kits come with a fence like this one, which basically inserts into the router. So it's got edge guides right here. On my router, it fits right on the end, just like this. The end with the nuts, the tightening nuts, is the end that will give you the most flexibility in terms of distance from the center of the router. So as an example, I have a piece of board here that will be the side of a shelving unit, but I want to make these shelves adjustable, so I want some adjustable holes plotted out along the edge, and these holes will accommodate the dowels that will hold up the shelving. All right, so I'm going to do 3 adjustable holes about every 1.5 inches. So as long as you've plotted everything ahead of time, everything's going to be a breeze once you get into doing the actual drilling. I want to line up my router with that horizontal line. I don't think you guys can see that. My router obviously has a center mark where the bit will enter. So now I'm not in the right spot. So I can loosen the fence nuts and slide the router with the fence resting right up square against the edge of the board to line up with the center mark right here. Then we tighten the nuts back up. And now we're good. Now I know that all along this board, all the holes are going to be evenly spaced from the edge of the board. I'm going to line up my bit with the cross marks that I have. So all I have to do is line up the holes with the cross line, and I know I'm going to get the hole in the right place every time. We move over to the next mark. And now we get to the last one. So there we have it. The holes have been drilled, evenly spaced, both horizontally and vertically. So now I can pop a dowel in and I can just put it into any of these 3 holes. Now I have perfectly spaced positionings for my shelving so that I can lower or raise the shelving. So of course I've been using 1/4 inch doweling and a 1/4 inch spiral bit to do my holes in this video, but you can get a larger spiral bit and do any size that you want, anything from 1/2 inch to 3/8 and maybe even larger. So as you can see, your plunge router just acts as a portable precision drill press and allows you to do any type of dowel joinery that you want with real ease. So those are 2 really easy applications in using your plunge router for dowel joinery. Now, This is just so much easier than getting a jig out. Some of these jigs that you see, like this one for example, is just a pain in the butt to fiddle with these. With your plunge router and a simple jig, you've got the perfect joinery kit. And even with the loose tenon joinery that I've shown you, you know, this is actually a really low stress solution to joining just about anything. I suggest that you invest in some decent carbide spiral bits. Well, that concludes doing dowel joinery using your plunge router as a portable drill press. If you want to buy me a beer, head on over to my Patreon page over here. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. There are a couple more videos on this side you can watch. Until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.